Hello and welcome to the first Maurer Glass podcast of 2018. I'm Jill Maurer and I'm here with Artimus, and today we are going to be discussing New Year's resolutions. Resolutions are interesting. I think a lot of people make them, mostly Western culture, and I think today they say about 40% of people make New Year's resolutions. I'm not sure the exact percentage, and they have all the percentages for how many people actually keep them, and it isn't very many. So I think that we all have this kind of desire to, toward the end of the year and starting a new year, we reflect back, and I think the resolution is really about our desire to improve ourselves. And we take this opportunity to make a resolution. I just don't think that as a whole we do a great job. It just doesn't seem to be the most effective method of improving our lives.
Yeah, it's strange that we think about the beginning of the year as the only time that we can really evaluate ourselves. People make changes throughout the year, but for some reason, New Year's, they just decide, okay, this is it. It's going to clear everything off.
Right.
I'm going to be this sometimes completely new, sometimes just changing a few things. And yeah, I think they were saying that most people give up their resolutions about halfway through spring.
Yeah, or they just forget. Mm-hmm. I mean, normally, a lot of times, by March, people don't remember what their New Year's resolutions were. And I think they make too many, and they're grand, and they're not defined, and they just, it's sort of like wishing upon a star. They just say it and therefore hope that it happens. It's not really a plan. And I understand this because, I've done the same thing.
I've given up. There was one year I told myself, I'm not going to play a single video game this year. Made it 7 days. 7 days, couldn't do it.
Yeah. I think I have been successful with some New Year's resolutions, and what I have done is I've made it something that would improve my life but wasn't so daunting that I couldn't do it. And then I put in my calendar the beginning of each quarter to sort of check in. Like, do you remember you were doing this? Are you doing it? So I had several opportunities to reevaluate and see if I could start again. And
were they big things or small things?
Well, they were small things that made a reasonably big impact. So one of them was I never flossed my teeth, and I decided that I was going to floss my teeth. And I ended up being somebody who never flossed her teeth to now somebody who daily flosses her teeth. And I was able to do that. But it's not like I said it and it just happened. I set a notice, I set a little note for myself March 1st and realized I hadn't done anything. And so I realized I needed to make it easier for myself, easier on myself. I just wasn't sure what I was doing. So I set up a plan where I put the dental floss next to my chair where I watch television. And while that seems a little odd, it worked for me. I would be sitting there watching television, I would glance over, I'd see the dental floss, and I would sit there and floss my teeth. Now, this may not be the most elegant approach, but it did work. And eventually, after a while, and I mean months, the dental floss moved into the bathroom, and now I floss my teeth every night. The reason it finally stuck for me, it didn't stick for me as far as cleanliness for my teeth, oddly enough. What I read was that if you floss your teeth, it is one way to prevent a heart attack. And it doesn't seem to make sense, but apparently the same bacteria that is around your teeth is around a person's heart in a heart attack. I'm not really sure of the details, but I read this and I thought, for some reason, like just general mouth cleanliness wasn't motivating enough. I felt like I was...
Now you're preventing heart disease.
But now, and heart disease runs in my family, and that is something that I was very concerned about.
That's interesting.
So I floss my teeth for heart health. Now, I don't know if it's really helpful in that way, but the truth is flossing my teeth is good for me, and now I do it.
Okay, well, if you'll excuse me, let me just make a note here. Floss teeth to avoid heart attack. Okay. All
there
right.
You go. You had mentioned that it seems kind of an arbitrary time of year, January 1st, and I agree with that. For me, it was where I made the most changes in my life, and I did it very, very intentionally. It was the beginning of school each year. And for me, especially when we moved, so I was a military child, and one of the advantages of being a military child was that every 2 or 3 years I moved. And this was a total reset for me. So on the downside, I don't have childhood friends that I've known since the first grade. That's not part of my lore. But every 2 or 3 years, I was offered a complete and total reset. And we would generally move, in the military, you generally move over the summer. And so when we would move and I would go to a new school, I remember this even very, very young. I remember thinking, all of these people, they don't know me, they don't know what mistakes I've made in the past, they don't know what I've done, and I've done well here and I've not done well here. I am going to be better at this. And I would take that opportunity and really, really do it. And, we all know the kid who in high school they're still teasing him because he peed in his pants in the first grade. But I never had that experience where people knew me through my
there
awkward
are new people
years.
every single
Yeah.
I went through the same thing. I went to about 5 different elementary schools by the time I had reached the 4th grade. So yeah, I was constantly resetting, and after the 2nd or 3rd I just stopped trying. I was like, my name's Phil, who cares? Like, I won't see any of you in about 3 weeks anyway. How long is this one gonna last? The idea of changing yourself throughout the year, I think people do it, but it might also be a community thing. If someone decides to make a drastic change, like they say, I want to change my hair drastically, or I want to remove certain people from my life or something, they feel like it will be more accepted by other people if they do it during a time when you're expected to make a big change.
That's interesting. I don't know, because I don't know. There are 2 schools of thought on this. If you're going to make a drastic change, whether you should even tell people. Sometimes there are people I have edited out of my life without making a declaration. You can kind of wean them, slowly. It is interesting about that. Or like if I'm going to start eating healthier, or if I'm going to exercise or quit smoking or whatever it is, I'm not sure what the statistics say on whether it's better to tell people or not. I mean, some people would support you and some say they're supporting you, but will...
Yeah, it's just a theory, because you think about if you have say you have a friend and he decides somewhere in the middle of July, he says, I've been watching a lot of UFC lately and I want to take kickboxing. And his friends are immediately, I don't know about women, but I know with guys, like, we're immediately going to just roast him for that. Like, seriously, you? I mean, dude, I saw you in the 3rd grade when that kid pushed you down the slide. Like, there's no way you're going to fight in the UFC. What are you doing? But if he waits until New Year's, suddenly it's more of we're all trying new things. I'm just going to try kickboxing and see if it's for me. And then that way, halfway through summer of the next year, when he's really into it, by then everyone's like, yeah, that's this guy. He does kickboxing. That's his thing, and it's completely normal.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder, though, what the difference would be if he said to you in the middle of the summer, rather, than saying anything before that, I've been taking kickboxing for 6 months.
Right. There is that.
So he's already established that.
Oh, gee, I was wondering, you got all these colored belts in your wardrobe. You're looking at the mailman a little bit differently when he sasses you. I've been wondering what's going on with you.
So have you ever successfully kept either a New Year's resolution or just made a major change that you were really successful?
No, I'm going to be honest. I don't make New Year's resolutions. I think I have enough regular changes to my life to where I don't really feel like, okay, everything was going horribly this past year, I'm going to change everything on this day. I've been really good, especially lately, with just making the changes as I see them. Like, I don't like this, so let me just go ahead and get rid of that or stop doing that. Because that thing with people being afraid of making a change throughout the year, I think that what they're really afraid of is their close friends always understand. If I tell my closest friends, hey, I'm going to try kickboxing, they're going to be like, oh, seriously? Like, is it hard? Like, let me know how that is. But it's usually the second degree people that people are worried about. Like, oh, so-and-so heard so-and-so's trying kickboxing. Oh, seriously? That guy? So I don't really have too many of those people. I have my very close friends around me, and I talk to them regularly, and they know that I frequently try new things. So
I think one of the dangers of the New Year's resolution in particular is that if you declare your New Year's resolution to yourself or to someone else, and then by February 15th you've either forgotten it or you didn't do anything, and then you remember it again, you go, oh well, I failed, I'll wait till next year, when in truth there's no magic to that day. You can change at any time. And so I honestly think it's kind of better to make a change
Yeah.
when you want to make the change. And most people, I think, who have lost a lot of weight or who did quit smoking or did do these major things, I think what the statistics say is they had several tries and fails, and then they hit upon it. And I just think that's part of the human condition and part of our process where we can sit back and say, well, I tried it and I failed because of this, so here's how I'm going to adjust my plan.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like I did with though it's a smaller thing, with putting the floss by the TV.
Yeah, I think it makes a more interesting character too. If someone tells me that they changed something about their life because it was a New Year's resolution, that's interesting. It's great that you stuck through it. But if someone says, I've been genuinely concerned with how much time I spend on the internet, and so I decided to just stop, to limit the amount of time, for me that's more interesting, more admirable. And for me, if they pull it off, it's more, they're changing it because they recognize it as a problem versus I'm supposed to change something and this seemed impressive to other people, so I'm going to try it.
Right. So the challenge with something like that, where you say, I want to be on the internet less, it's not just about that. It's about what I'm going to replace that time with.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of need to have that plan for yourself. Like, these are the 4 other things I could be doing. Or maybe it's just that I'll go to sleep earlier or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
so that you don't, because I think you could sit there and go, well, I'm not going to be on the internet. All right, so I'm going to do what? What am I, I think that for most of us, toward the end of the year is when we have most of our vacation time. So we have a lot of our vacation time. We're together with family, and we're naturally kind of assessing where we are. We're able to step away from work a little bit and look at it more objectively, where it fits in our life, unlike what you're able to do when you're down deep into it. And so you're stepping out of your life for a minute, coming back a lot of times to your core, to the people that you were with before, and you're evaluating. There's also a lot of decadence during that time. You're eating a lot more, you're indulging, and so you have this sort of mentality a lot of times that you're going to purge. Like, I'm eating a lot now, but I'm going to, starting January 1st, I'll never eat again. So.
And the harder part is that it is that time of year when you've just been with your family for about 2 or 3 weeks, and you got off Thanksgiving, and it's chaotic. And then suddenly you just say, all right, clear everything. I'm going to use this chaotic time to evaluate myself. It maybe would be better done somewhere else in the year. But that all depends on, like, for students, their year doesn't really start January. They're about to go into their second semester of school. The year really starts at the end of summer, when they're about to go to college or start the new year.
For me, that remains where I see renewal. And really, you do think of it more in the spring, but no, for me, it is that fall. And I think it does have to do with back when I was in school, had the summer off, and I was starting again. One thing that I see a lot nowadays, which is very trendy, in addition to the quit smoking or quit whatever bad habit, lose weight, start exercising, whatever it is this notion of I'm going to find my passion. And it's not always a New Year's thing, but it's like this major thing that we all feel pressure to do now, and especially millennials. And I know we did a little video on that, and how much pressure that really is to find your passion, and especially when you're young. Millennials right now are young, and for most of us who do find our passion, it's a little later in life, and sometimes we realize we've been doing it, or we've been exposed to enough that we know what it is, and some of us never necessarily find it. But what are your thoughts on that? What do you feel? It's hard to say. Like, when people ask me, as a woman, what is it like to work as a woman? I'm going to ask you, like, to do the same thing to you as a millennial. What kind of pressure do you feel to?
It's impossible. I believe it's impossible to characterize any group beyond 2 or 3 people. I mean, me and my brother were having this discussion the other day. We were talking about how even the 2 of us we're related. We grew up in the same environment. We have a lot of the similar. But if you were to compare our personalities, it's impossible. We're so it's impossible to characterize any group beyond one person. But if I were to make the biggest guess I could, I would say that our pressure comes from 2 places. One, growing up, we've been constantly told, maybe more so than any other generation because of the spread of media, the internet, and the access of information. We've been told more than any other generation that we are just not good enough, we're the reason this is happening, we're the reason that this is happening, we're the problem people. So we immediately had that dense pressure of there's something you should be living up to, and whatever you're doing, it's not working. And they've blamed us for everything from the decline of the economy to the collective decline of holiday seasons to the collective decline of this. So there's one part.
Do you feel that you were told your whole life that you were not
Yes.
good enough, or just when you were
Entire
young?
life. I can remember every elementary school I went to, the theme was the same. Like, for whatever reason, they had just decided that we were going to be this emotional punching bag. Not everybody, but we have been an emotional punching bag for our entire
Because
existence.
the stereotype, so somebody my age looking at your group, the stereotype that I hear other people say is they were always told that they were perfect, and that they just had to show up, and they didn't, you got a trophy just for being there. And I do remember with my own son, they didn't want to keep score. And so it's not the stereotype that we hear. What we hear is, oh, they were told they were perfect all the time, and so now that they're older, they feel this feeling that when we say you didn't do that well, that it's, that we're slapping them. I don't know. It's
and that
it's
experience might be different for every millennial, but
Yeah.
that's never been my experience.
That's interesting.
It went, which was sort of the frustrating part, was that it went from you're not this, you're not that, to when we're older, like, well, the reason you guys are not good now is that we told you that you were nice. Well, when were you guys ever nice to us? Like, and not that you guys were, mean and abusive, just in general, we haven't been looked at. The second thing I think that happened was that we grew up in the absolute boom of the golden age of entertainment and media. You had people who were starting making music in their basements now because of the internet could now explode and become these stadiums selling out artists. And you had movies made by people who started out as this, then became a filmmaker. You had this huge boom of independent artists, writers, people who just decided to do what it is they love and be successful at it. And based on Darwinian logic, every one of those people that is successful are people who one day in their story on their Wikipedia page said, you know what, I'm not going to do this thing I'm not passionate about anymore. I'm going to do this, and they succeeded. So over enough time, I think we were cultivated to say, okay, my story has to be one day I say no to things I'm not passionate about. I blindly do the thing I'm passionate about, and then I'm successful.
The problem is those are the only stories you're hearing.
Exactly.
You're not hearing
Yeah.
the bum on the street saying, well, I decided
Yeah.
not to do anything unless I was passionate about it, now I'm homeless. But you didn't invent anything there. Like, we all, I grew up with the same thing. It was sort of the young Republicans and the people who followed, we didn't use those words, but followed their dream or followed the money, made a lot of money. And you hear about the Bill Gates of the world and the people who took over the world, and you don't hear about the ones who didn't succeed. So every generation, I think, has this unrealistic ideal. One of the things that I hope is that success one day is no longer only measured by money. Because some of the people that have impacted me the most in my life, and when I really look at them that were happiest and were really giving back in the world, we tend to think they're all or nothing, that they're either the millionaires, or they're the nuns and the people who have rejected everything only to do good. And that's not true. Some of the people making the biggest impact in the world are making money, and they're just making a modest amount of money, and it's just the way that they live. And so in my life, some of the people who have impacted me the most profoundly are school teachers, for example. They're doing what they're doing to earn a living, but they're making a profound difference. Some of them. I mean, some of them are mediocre. Some of them are just fantastic.
Yeah, and then that's a whole thing of whether or not my mother was a teacher, and I completely don't understand why teachers aren't in that upper percentage in terms of, like, they shouldn't be struggling. Teachers should never be struggling. It's the biggest investment you can make. Nobody is who they are without the dozen or so teachers they had growing up and mentors. So that part definitely doesn't make sense. Some of it also may come from the idea that it's impossible for us in the digital age to imagine an impactful person who, by correlation, didn't also have resources because of it. It's hard to be the next Elon Musk without the money to actually do it. So we sort of understand that we really know and believe that there is a correlation between resources, fame, success, having an impact, and money. It sort of all goes together. But there are impactful people that died. Edgar Allan Poe impacted me in a way that is, I could never even put into words how much he changed like my personality after I first started reading his stuff. But that man did not die a super wealthy man. He died fairly in obscurity.
Or even really very happy.
Or even liked.
Yeah. So there is this sense also of this sort of false celebrity, this person who's famous just for being famous. And while a lot of us like to blame millennials on that and the Kardashians and whatever, it started before that. There was Paris Hilton in our day where we just went, this is okay. She's what? She's famous because she's famous.
Yeah.
I never followed her. I've never seen a single Kardashian episode. I'm a firm believer that celebrity comes from celebrate, and we choose who we celebrate. And I hope that one day we look through a different lens and we're celebrating people who are making a big difference and who are doing incredible things. And that doesn't always mean they're a little harder to find, and I hope that we find how to celebrate them. They're not always the person making the most money. They're rarely the person on the red carpet. They're not always the person with a gold medal around their neck. Those things can be, but aren't always. And I hope with this social media and this whole... So right now, social media has us celebrating some people who we have no reason to celebrate. They're just famous for being famous. I don't know how this happens, but I would like to celebrate people who are good people who are making a difference and maybe not making a lot of money, so that when we set our resolutions and because we always look at celebrities and whether we realize it or not, they are in some way impacting how we want to model our lives. We want to lose weight not because that will make us healthy and make us live a longer life, and we're able to spend more time with our loved ones, but because we look better. We look better in pictures, and we look more like so-and-so.
It's going to be hard, and I actually think social media has maybe helped that more than hurt it, because of the internet and stuff like that, we're learning about some of these people who are smaller. We're reading articles about someone who started a shelter in some state where they didn't have the funding. We have more access, but as a result, we have access to other ones. There are always going to be people who look up to people for things that other people think, is that worth them being in a book? Is that really, did they really do something important? Maybe social media helps and hurts that by exposing people who are truly...
I will agree with you in that it does help. And the reason that I would say that it does, or it can, and I hope that that's what we sort of, we decide what we celebrate and what we foster, and we're still kind of doing that. So as we're, sort of evaluating our year and establishing whether we're going to have New Year's resolutions, I think for us, the take home is, if you want to make change, you get to make change anytime during the year. And, and you allow yourself to have some false starts and tweak. And we're humans, and we're just not very good at snapping our fingers and making a change. So if you make a New Year's resolution, that's great. If you realize in February or March you're not doing it, you don't have to wait till next year. You get to try again.
You want a mohawk in July? Go for it. Sports car in August? All game.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of Maurer Glass Podcast. Welcome to 2018. We hope to get to know you even better, and we'll see you next time.